Okay, so that though brings up a question that you talked about inside of the your TED talk,
Mhm,
and that is ISPs.
mhm.
You, you let us kind of know. Well, ISPs are a mess, or can
Yeah,
be a mess.
right.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so essentially, when you sign up for and take your pick, I don't care who it is, AT&T, Verizon, Comcast, et cetera, to get internet connection in your home, they're going to basically ship you a modem. They're going to ship you a device that essentially you plug in, and the device is designed to be as easy as humanly possible for non-technical people to plug in and get running and just get onto the internet. The problem that we have is that the manufacturers of these devices oftentimes don't have good software development for security, meaning they're not patching these things, they're not updating these things until a massive amount of patches were out there. And when I did that talk, that was on the heels of learning that there was something like 70 odd known vulnerabilities in the modems that Comcast, AT&T, and I think it was Time Warner were all sending out from this one manufacturer, which basically means I could teach a third grade class how to break into this thing. So that's obviously a very huge thing. So you cannot rely on basically your internet
Mm,
service provider for security. You really need to go and get more secure products yourself, and they make them for residential customers as well as business. I'm not expecting any person in their house to spend what a corporation would for, let's say, an enterprise level firewall, but they definitely make firewalls that detect threat that are affordable for the house, and everybody should be running those because it's one of the safest things you can do.
I'm going to ask a question that you may not want to answer, but it's okay. Answer it anyway. Windows 11 and 10, they have a firewall built in. Is that
Mhm.
good enough?
No. And the reason being, I'm not shy.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not shy at all. No, I mean Windows Firewall. It's a good attempt. Windows Firewall has been around since the Windows 2000s era or so. But the problem is that it's what you're looking at is something that essentially has to defend itself. Ideally, in a network, what you want is you want the ability to stop the threat before it actually touches your device. So if I'm sitting in my house and I've got, let's say, a firewall that detects threat. Let's say I go to that site. I accidentally type in google.com as opposed to google.com, and it takes me to a malicious site where it tries to download an infection. Ideally, my firewall will see that and stop it before it gets to my device, my computer. And a good cyber strategy for business or for home is to stop the threat before it gets into your network. If your computer has to defend yourself, you're doing it wrong.
And okay.
Yes, antivirus, endpoint detection response, all that kind of stuff is your backup to good infrastructure defense. Meaning, if I'm sitting here with AT&T in my house, I better be stopping it right at the door, not letting it in, and making sure and having my computers defend themselves.
I see. Okay, that
Mhm.
makes great sense. That makes great sense. Now, when we talked earlier about the two major components, or I think you added a third one on there, I kind of got a little bit lost, and also a little bit lost during your TEDx. So I'm going to ask you
Okay,
to dive into that just a little bit.
sure.
The effective trust. What is that?
So, effective trust is the nostalgia that you have. Another one of the examples that I use, it's your emotional tie to something that allows you to extend trust. Another one of the examples that I use in that talk is I can make myself, for example, if I'm trying to fish you, I can find you on LinkedIn. And on LinkedIn, I'm going to see your work history. I'm probably going to see your education history. I can go to classmates.com. I can find all of these things out about people simply because we put it out there. We have a need to share. And so by virtue of that, let's say, and I don't know where you went to university, but let's an easy one. Let's say you went to Harvard. Okay. Everybody knows Harvard. So you
Okay.
went to Harvard. I can see, okay, your Harvard class of whatever you are. Now I know what you're into. Now I know what you've majored in. Now I know where you went and what your class is. I'm going to make myself look like somebody from that class. I can go and figure out who the class list is. Thank you, classmates.com, et cetera, et cetera. And then basically create a profile of somebody that was in your class in, let's say you studied business at Harvard. Okay. I can be in that class. I can even look up old teacher rosters thanks to archive searches and all that kind of stuff. And so I can be like, oh, yes, I was also Harvard class of XYZ. Do you remember that professor, blah, 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 that taught this? Oh my God, what a jerk. I hated him. Did you like him? And now you're like, okay, I have checked off so many boxes. Oh my God, he's in my class. He remembers that professor. He's obviously went to Harvard, et cetera, et cetera. Now you're extending trust into me. You're accepting me whether you realize it or not. And so by virtue of that, let's say I connect to you on social media. Let's say you have a Facebook account and I know that you're into, I don't know, baseball. Okay, I can go and say, hey, I know you're a big, I don't know, Cubs fan. Here are 2 tickets to the Cubs that I just can't use. That, I know you're a huge baseball fan. I see you post about it all the time. Why don't you go have fun? Here they are. And I send you a PDF that's infected. Here we are. This is how we break into companies. This is how we break into organizations. One of those tactics that we use is essentially banking on that effective trust. If I'm going to be breaking into a large corporation because they're paying me to do this, I will literally show up early to these meetings every time just to chat up the executive assistant to the CIO or whoever I'm meeting with. So he or she gets a feeling, oh, yes, I'm going to be the new security officer here. Like, it's good to meet you. Like, oh, yeah, I come from this. And I'm totally talking people up. And so when they sign the contract and I walk out of that third or fourth meeting, one of the first things I do is say, hey, hey, can I sit down in front of your computer real quick? We need to check something for security. And they will automatically stand up and they will automatically let me in. And these are things that we are banking on. It's the emotional connection we have to others. It's that camaraderie that we feel. And in the case of the coffee shop, it feels good to walk in and everybody says, Norm, everybody knows you, right? Every time Norm walked into Cheers, that's a comfortable feeling. The barista, he or she is going to make your drink exactly the same way because you have a weird drink and that's how she does it. These are things that we just take for granted in our everyday life, but it's essentially who we are. That's what I'm going to
Curious.
exploit. Yeah.
Curious. Okay. That is kind of scary because we all want to connect with somebody.